Hi, everyone. We're about to get started, just letting some additional people in. It's the top of the hour, and we always like to start things on time because we value your time. All right, let's get started. Hi, everybody. I'm Laura Stewart. I am the Director of Online Channel Events at SaaSMAX, a former MSP, and a love of the channel is something that's built into who I am. And I'm excited to be here with you today for this one-time exclusive webinar that SaaSMAX is so proud to present to you. Just a couple of little housekeeping details. If you have any questions, please type them in the question pane, and we will be monitoring them throughout the webinar and also taking questions at the end and having them answered for you. We're excited to be here. We know a number of you have also typed in questions at your registration, and I have those all set and ready to answer for you today. And we've actually woven some of those questions directly into the webinar so that they can best meet your needs. So this is an exciting webinar for me because it's talking about creating revenue in the new digital normal. And you know that the world has gone crazy for months, but the world as we knew it in the channel really was ceasing to exist as we knew it long before COVID happened. So why do we still look to find partners in the same way? The digital normal has accelerated as a result of the perfect storm that has been going on the last year in the world. Every vendor is in a race to succeed or perish. Every day on the news, we read about the demise of a brand as the way we do business and buy products changes. So how do you find the right partners who can deliver the right experiences for your customers? Actually, it's pretty simple. It requires a different channel approach from the way you did it in the past. Finding the right partners matters, and it starts with finding the sweet spot for your partners. The stronger the data, the better the partner. And I have to say to you that there is no one better in the world to talk about finding the right partners for digital normal than my guest today, our guest today. I like to call her the intergalactic ruler of the channel universe, Janet Schijns. You know, I've known her for so long, and I'm totally bumbling today because I'm just so excited to have Janet on the show. Is Channel Influencer of the Year in 2019, 3-time 5-star Channel Award winner, world-renowned go-to-market expert, sci-fi loving, and to prep for this, I actually watched an episode of Next Generation Star Trek. She's Converse-wearing, straight-talking, super connecting channel champion. Janet, welcome to this webinar.
Thank you so much for having me. It's such an honor to be here, and I'm giddy as well to be getting to do this with you. So, you know, excuse us if we're having fangirl moments during the session. I promise you'll still get a lot out of it. So.
It's great. You know, I've had you on broadcast radio with me interviewing you, but this, because it's so specific to something that's so near and dear to both our hearts, the channel, and the success of the channel from both sides of it. This is like nothing we've ever. And let's just dive in because we have so much we want to talk about here. You know, what really are we seeing? What is the digital normal?
So, you know, I'm so glad you asked that question. And I'm going to just tell everybody kind of buckle up, put your seatbelt on, or, you know, sit back in your chair, relax. We're going to have a good dialogue today, but I want to make sure that first we talk about what's really happening, right? So many people say, oh, well, everything's going digital because of the pandemic. And I think that's dangerous thinking because the digital normal didn't happen because of the pandemic. It accelerated because of the pandemic. It was already happening. You already had the vast majority of people who want to buy technology, B2B technology buyers, either millennials or Gen Zs. So close to 73% of buyers now for technology are actually millennials and Gen Zs. And they want to buy differently, they want to interact differently, they want to learn differently. They believe that digital is almost their birthright. It's like water, you know, food, paying taxes, and oh, by the way, everything's digital. And so their expectation is that our community, our channel community particularly, which is where they buy those solutions, is able to engage on a digital level. If you think of the digital normal on a consumer standpoint, You see it now in play here in the pandemic with everybody having delivery. You can order online, you can customize and personalize online. It comes right to your house. That's the consumer side of digital normal. The B2B side of digital normal, which is perhaps most interesting to us, says I'm going to be able to find the content I want when I want it, because you're going to be searchable and understandable. I'm going to be able to understand who the experts are without a salesperson calling me. And I'm going to be able to learn about your solution and begin to narrow down my buying decisions long before we speak. And what's important about this is that technology B2B buyer in the digital normal, in any company over 100 people, it's not a tech buyer alone. There's business buyers as well, and they have an anticipation that they will also be able to get that same content and that same understanding online, connect with people online, understand your value online, and make a purchasing decision long before, in many instances, they talk to a channel partner. And so in that, this means a very new normal for the channel, which was traditionally an events, hugs and mugs, dial in for dollars, or as folks under 30 go, dialing for dollars, because that's the kind of phone they use. They don't know what that means. So if anybody ever looks at you funny, by the way, pro tip, if anybody looks at you funny when you do this, this is actually their sign for call. And so who knew? So so that's kind of one of those, right, this is a good representation of that digital normal. And so for our channels, this means a very new normal for them in the way to go to market, but it also means a very new normal in how you pick your best channel partners. And trying to plow through that alone, which is why I'm so grateful to be sponsored in this session by SaaSMAX, trying to plow through that data alone and find the right partner in a digital normal is not really possible. And this is where data can so enrich our partner journey.
All right, so let's talk about that. Let's actually dive right in, because I know you've got a lot of tips that we're going to share in here. But I think a great starting question is, a lot of us know that, right? We know that the data is important. We know that we have to look at things differently. I didn't know this was the new this. So, hey, I already learned something. What are some of the things that the channel can do right now to begin even finding out what the right information is that they need to be gathering to find that sweet spot of the partners, and to understand like who the partner reaches as well?
It's a really great question. So I'll start by saying, and this is perfect, so thank you for putting my next slide up. So I'll start by saying that I think it's irrefutable that the topology of the channel will change. So finding the right channel partners is key to success. And thinking, I know who my top channel partners are. I have platinum partners and gold partners, and they did the revenue last year, and maybe they did the certifications, because more than 60% of vendors, if you're listening in and you're a vendor, this is you, more than 60% of the vendors will admit that for their top partners, they waive certification and other requirements as long as the partner hits revenue. So here's the issue. Revenue is a rear view mirror view of things. It only indicates how the person did in most B2B technology enterprise sales 18 months ago. How good were they at getting demand 18 months ago? And 18 months ago was a really long time ago, particularly when you think of what we've done, both from digital, but also, pandemic and everything else. So what I like to do when I speak with partners with a vendor is I like to ask a couple questions. Now, the first one is about their website. So if you really want to just have a quick tip on how to find out if a partner is good at the digital normal, just lean in on your next conversation and say, what's your website worth? And watch, because if they can't tell you what their website is worth, they're not very good at the digital normal. People that are using their website and using it for search engine optimization and lead maximization and content distribution, they know what their website is worth. And if they don't know what their website is worth, they can at least Google it quickly enough for you to, think that they knew what it was worth. The people that go, and then say, I don't sell on the web, why would it matter? It does matter, because your website value is a composition of the amount of business and eyeballs that come to see content on your website and how many people you convert from searching for you. And in the digital normal, as I mentioned earlier, 70+% of B2B tech buyers want to search for their solution first. So if your website has no value, or it has a little value and it's declining every month, you're not going to succeed 18 months from now on converting those new things. Oh, Laura, could you just go back one? Sorry. Back to thanks. So you have to understand, what's there, right? The second thing is, as you look at their website, what's on it? Are you on it? Now, here's the thing. You can have 10 people that have to scan the websites of every single partner to see if your logo's on there, if your solutions are on there, if your most recent content's on there. That's a lot of work. That's where data comes in. Tools like SaaSMAX PartnerOptimizer, letting you actually see with one click of a button which one of your gold platinum partners actually have your stuff on their website. But the third thing you want to know is, do their salespeople have good LinkedIn SSIs? Now, I'm going to talk a little bit more about this later, but here's just a tip for you. If a salesperson has a LinkedIn SSI, which, by the way, you can just Google LinkedIn SSI score at any point in time that you want and look up your own pro tips. So, sign into LinkedIn first and then Google. It just makes it easier. If the score is not 70 or better, they are not an expert social seller. Now, what that means is, if your partner does not have expert social sellers, they're going to also struggle. So check the website, check that you're on the website, and then have a conversation. Are your folks social sellers? And we're going to talk a lot more about that in a minute, but that web presence is really important. I cannot hear you. I'll keep talking if you go to the next slide. Perfect. So from a focus standpoint, you also want to look at what are they selling and who do they sell to. So, traditionally we'll have this conversation with partners and with vendors, and the vendor will say, oh, they're in my focus 10, or they're in my top 20, or they're partners that I really want to work with. And then when I ask, well, what other specializations do they have? What other vendors do they sell for? What other certifications do they have? They cannot answer that. And so this is another example, by the way, where data matters. A tool like PartnerOptimizer lets you click right on the profile and see exactly what the partner does and who else they sell. And this really helps you to hone down what partners you go after and what partners you pay attention to. Because if your solution interacts with a Microsoft solution, or interacts with a Cisco solution, or interacts with you name whose solution, a McAfee solution, then you want to see somebody who has the certifications and has those solutions there as well. You don't want to just take what they're saying. You actually want to see it. And trying to discover that information will mean you have to add 10 channel account managers in every region, versus just using the data that's available to you through a tool like PartnerOptimizer. So we'll go to the next slide. The next part of the digital normal is really around skills. So what's really interesting to talk to the partners about skills. So the first skill, obviously, is having certifications, competencies around specific areas where you need them to have solution expertise. And in a digital normal world, though, it also expands upon what do they really do for marketing and sales. So sales has really declined. Sorry to anybody in sales out there. Sales has really declined in effectiveness for getting new demand and new leads as marketing has increased. And that's largely because of these digital tactics, right? Search, self-serve, if you will, for lead generation from end user buyers. And so if the partner doesn't have effective marketing, if they don't have people that are skilled on their team, I mentioned it earlier, in social selling, if they don't have people that are skilled in search engine optimization, search engine marketing, or don't have an agency who's doing it, these are dangerous skills for them not to have. But it expands beyond that skill set, because you really need to see partners that are working in digital as well. Are they working on their customers' digital roadmaps, digital technology? Are they part of the team that, for example, is working on the e-commerce site for their customer? And so this is where my first new channel comes in. So I want to talk a little bit today about, yes, you've got to look at your existing partners and their skills and their websites, etc. But there's some new shadow or alternate channels that are coming in here that are really having an impact. So let's think about the fact that In a digital normal, most end user businesses are putting a lot more stress on their digital assets than their physical assets. Their corporations are, probably closed right now from a physical standpoint. Their brick and mortar stores, if they have them, are seeing a lot less traffic. If they've got planes or hotels or whatever, physical assets are seeing less use. Digital assets are seeing more use. Who do they go to for their digital assets? Well, most mid-size enterprises or better have a digital agency. So they have someone that does their search engine marketing, their search engine optimization, their e-com, their website optimization, their wireframes, their so on, so forth. They're known as MarTech partners, marketing technology, MarTech. Because as an industry, we always have to have like an acronym for everything. We can't just call people value-added resellers or managed service providers. We have to say MSP and VAR. So MarTech, and I'm sure soon it'll be MTs, right? We'll get there, but it's MarTech right now. And so these MarTech partners are having very rich technology discussions with the CMO, many instances the CIO, in all instances the people that lead the marketing, demand gen, lead generation, etc. And they are beginning to sell a lot of technology. So the question is, are they selling yours? So when that customer says, they need to update their CRM system and they were using X CRM, I won't, name brand names, when this provider, this MarTech provider says, oh, that's going to take, that's a lot of effort to integrate, and they're not going to really work for what you're doing, and you should use Y CRM, they just do it. When that person says, we need your network to perform at this rate so that you don't have slow website performance, they do it. When they say, we need this email engine to do your email marketing, they do it. And so these MarTech partners are beginning to sell an awful lot of the technology that looks like yours. And they're coming now into security, into networking, into unified communication. Of course they are. If they're going to do lead generation and it's going to be click to talk to somebody, you're going to need a UCC solution. And so they've either become a non-selling entity, and a lot of folks like Microsoft and others are adding non-selling entities at a rate I think I just saw of 7,000 a month in their partner programs. Or they're becoming a selling entity, depending on what your solution is. And so thinking about how do you take these folks that have these new skills and integrate them into your partner program? How does the program have to change? What has to happen? Do you need a separate track for these people? Can you bring them into your program? These are really necessary conversations in the digital normal.
Can you hear me now?
I can hear you now.
Oh my gosh. Okay. So sometimes it does help to just plug and unplug.
It does. It actually works. So
which really builds off of your conversation about, do they have the right skills? Are they just talking out the side of the head because they have one customer that they want to look really good for and they want to sell your product? So let's talk about demand now and how you and they can build demand for it. And we're going to throw up a poll here, everybody, right now. So that should appear on your screens right now. And Janet, you want to just talk about this poll for a quick second?
Sure. So look, the bottom line is we typically hire, quote unquote, the channel to sell for us, to generate demand for us. And their job is supposed to be to prospect. So I'd love to hear your thoughts on whether they're excellent at that, just okay at that, not really very good at that, or you don't really know if they're good or not. So if everybody wouldn't mind clicking and giving us some answers.
And 47% have voted so far, so keep it up, everybody. I'll keep the poll open for just another couple of seconds. So we'd love to get your vote on this. This is, as Janet said, this is such a critical piece to the channel puzzle. Okay.
Sure.
Close the poll right now, and we had 70% of our watchers post, and the results should be up on the screen.
They are. So just think about this. Just okay was the most prevalent answer, and frankly, we'd like to see more excellence. All of us, I'm sure whoever answered just okay would love to have answered excellent. No good. And no clue if it's good or not. So only 5% thinking that the channel prospecting was excellent. And by the way, you would be right. So Laura, we can hide those polls and go back to sharing the screen. Perfect. So the question here for you is, can or can't your partners build demand? Now, I talked about website and knowing if you're on their website, that's a clear part of demand. I talked about focus. Are they focused on the right solutions? Do you know what solutions they're focused on? So that's also a key to demand. And their skills, also a key to demand. But prospecting, actually reaching out, trying to get customers is key. So if we can go to the next slide, I'm just going to share with you what we've seen in channel prospecting realities. So we do this survey every quarter. This is the June 2020 survey results. And we ask 3 questions. We ask the same 3 questions all the time. I will tell you that prior to the pandemic at the start of the year, it's not as if everybody was improved or had no change. There was still a lot of decreased or low results. So the first question we ask is, in the past 45 days, have your demand generation results improved, decreased, or had no change? So a whopping 80% say their demand generation results have decreased. And only 5% say it's improved, which is interesting because that's probably the 5% of the folks that said, my channel's great at demand. So what's happening here? What's happening is people are sticking with old-fashioned demand generation techniques, and ROI on, by the way, on MDF spend from vendors, as well as channels' own investment in demand generation, has decreased every quarter for the last 7 quarters, which is a clear indication this is not economic, this is not pandemic. It's exacerbated by the pandemic, but it is not just the pandemic. It is truly the wrong marketing tactics, strategies, content, etc., being used and not getting customers. Now, second question we ask is, in the past 45 days, has your marketing ROI improved, decreased, or stayed the same? So that ROI question is really important, right? 70%, this is an unbelievably bad number. We typically see, 20 or 30% decrease, 70% decrease in ROI. So not only are their demand generation results decreasing, their ROI is decreasing very quickly as well. And then finally, in the past 45 days, have you increased, decreased, or had no change in effort? So if we had seen 80% of the people said they decreased their efforts to prospect, we might be more understanding of the first 2 numbers. But 50% of them have kept the same, 20% have increased. So 70% are doing the same or better. 30%, and this is proven out by the recent Channel Futures survey of the MSP 501, where 28% of them said they've stopped prospecting for new business because they're so busy trying to handle the issues that their clients are having with remote work. So we know that a certain percentage of people have in fact decreased their prospecting. But if you look at this is a very sad state for the traditional IT telco cloud channel. And so if we go to the next slide, perfect. Let's talk a little bit about this.
Let's talk about social selling and those numbers that you were just talking about. But, I've always kind of followed the whole MarTech, the whole idea of social selling, but never really thought of it like we think of social selling now. Think about when drug companies were allowed to begin advertising. That took pharmaceutical sales through the roof, right? Because nobody knew about these drugs that were available. And now all of a sudden, they controlled the conversation that happened behind closed doors in the doctor's offices. Even the legal profession, they never used to be allowed to advertise. Then all of a sudden, the legal firms were advertising, and the number of lawsuits escalated. Think about all of the mesothelioma class action suits, all of those that are going on. That is a form of social selling that was going on back when we had more traditional media. How has that shifted into what the channel can now use to begin really completely controlling, not necessarily controlling, because I hate that word, but directing the conversation?
Yep, and I think it's 2 things. So the first thing is, as we think about demand generation versus lead generation, so demand generation is typically the purveyance of the marketing team, right? They're going to bring you some demand. People that want to engage, want to learn more, traditionally called a marketing qualified lead, right? But then that marketing qualified lead needs to become a sales qualified lead, which means that the seller has taken specific actions to have a relationship of some sort that would lead to buying, and that is typically lead generation, right? So many times sellers, before I get into social selling, I always want to point out, many times sellers will say marketing's demand generation doesn't give me any leads. And marketing will say, well, we're generating demand, we're getting people aware, right? It's the salespeople's job to get them interested. And this is where social selling really takes a turn from traditional selling, where, if I got a lead that had a PO, knew me from my old company I worked on, had budget, and needed to move this week, I thought it was a good lead. If not, all leads were bad, right? And that is traditionally the seller's view on marketing leads. Ugh, I got to follow up on this demand generation campaign. 50 people downloaded the white paper. None of them are going to buy. Social selling flips this on the head. And this says, look, traditional selling is kind of done, and everybody is now a member of the marketing team. So the best sellers out there, the people whose results are growing, the people who are saying, in that small group of people that said, my demand is better, my leads are better, and I'm closing more sales, it's because they're practicing social selling. And this can really improve your partner's demand generation results very rapidly, because what it does is it says, look, we're practicing marketing, right? So if you think about one of your partners having a social media page on LinkedIn, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, whatever they have, that's the corporation trying to get demand. But when all of the people that also work in sales are on and have a page that is dedicated to them trying to engage with customers, that's called social selling. And that's when your demand for your solutions will really go up. So we can move on to the next slide, and I'll talk a little bit more about that. So when I talk about social selling at its simplest is using tools like LinkedIn and Twitter to engage and build relationships. So on the next slide, I'll just talk through what I mean by that. So the first is that social selling creates relationships, and those relationships can produce results for your business by using your channel to sell. So let me give you an example. So today we're on this event. Some of you after this will connect with me, I hope, fingers crossed, on LinkedIn or Twitter or Facebook or whatever your choice is. I'm on all of them. And you'll want to have a conversation. And that conversation may be to ask me a question about how you can go after more demand with your channel, or what kind of channel partners should you go after? How should you change your program? And that's great, because you're trying to create a relationship. Now let's parlay that into your channel. So in the old days, a channel partner went to events to meet customers. They went to in-person sales calls, which, as we know, they're likely not going to be let in a company's building for anything but services right now. They might have done some calling. They did a lot of lunches, a lot of meetings at bars and restaurants and president's clubs and all kinds of things like that. And so now that relationship building capability is gone. So expert social sellers actually create relationships online. They share valuable content. They have discussions with people. They comment on their prospects' posts and shares and on their company news. They're intimately aware, because they use something like Sales Navigator and LinkedIn, or they use Google Alerts, when one of their contacts moves jobs or there's some news that impacts the company. They're there for their customers, and they build that relationship. And social selling does that by using a LinkedIn. LinkedIn's the best example to build those relationships. So when you find yourself with a partner who's not doing that, and also they're not going to events and they're not going to business meetings, they're not doing anything else, their demand results are obviously going to decline. So the first thing that social selling does for the partner is it lets them replace that relationship building that they were doing previously.
One of the things that I like to think about with social selling is this whole idea of, what are people saying when you're not with them? So the whole idea of the cocktail party. What are people talking about at the cocktail party that you weren't invited to, at the bar, at the event, when you've left, or out in the hallway when you've left? Wouldn't it be really cool if you were the fly on the wall in that room to know what people were really saying? And I like to think of, and tell me whether you agree or disagree, the whole concept of social selling lets you be that fly on the wall and actually help see what people are really saying and then provide your information in the context of the conversation as it's happening.
Right, and not just what they're saying, but also what their customers are saying. So most customers now use Twitter as a big one for customers to complain about web outages, about bad processes, about bad experiences, failures in mobile checkout, whatever your area of technology might be. When you set the right Google alerts or the right Twitter or LinkedIn alerts, you can see those, right? And so you actually are listening in almost as if you're in the boardroom with them on what their top concerns are. And you can see people move. So all of a sudden, all their top leaders moved and they have all new top leaders. This indicates a change in strategy, right? So all these things let you listen and have a better relationship.
And see your reputation as well.
And your reputation, right? Which helps you then, and this is always harder for people to understand because we've traditionally thought that if we made a statement, our value proposition, our brand, whatever it might be, and in this case, let's talk about a partner who has a certain value prop. We always believe that if we said it, the market believed it. And in a digital normal, no, customers complete your brand. So they are who actually says what you are. What you say you are doesn't matter at all. Only what your network says you are matters. So if I think about this from a standpoint of some of the MSPs in the world who are out there doing great work for their partners and probably selling some of the vendors that are on this call today's solutions. And yet when I survey them, less than 5% of them have an active reviews policy. So to get Google reviews, to get LinkedIn recommendations, to get the crowd's voice talking about their company. So what happens is instead, they get a snazzy social media page. They get a marketing person or intern or someone to make them beautiful tiles, and the tiles talk all about their company, and they think they are doing social media and social selling, and then they say, this step doesn't work. I've tried this. We post all the time. We're not getting any demand. And then I say, well, whoa. So if you were at an event, let's just take your last 5 posts, and I want you to pretend that you walked up to me at an event and I was a prospect. Read them to me. ABC company is the absolute best at supply chain optimization, security. The ABC company announces today that would you walk up to me and say that? Like, no. Would you? No, you would say, hey, let me hear about you. What's your business do? Oh, that's so interesting. We're in that area too. What sport team do you like? And you would establish a relationship, and then that would define your reputation with that customer. And so we don't do that on social media, and then we blame social media for not working, because we decided that it was a billboard for our business rather than a place for our network to define our reputation. And that's the key. Your network is defining your reputation. So you have to be engaging with people, asking for feedback, having customers on for podcasts or webinars, having discussions like we're having today, right? So this is so critical, and yet so few people get that it really comes down to what your network says you are that truly matters. And I always equate it back to that event. As you walk away from that person, the person's either going to say, wow, he was annoying, or wow, she was great. So what reputation are you leaving with when they leave your page? And I'm guaranteeing it's the mute button. If all you're doing is talking about your business, and then all your people in your company are reposting it and resharing it and feeling really good about themselves because they put this week's tile up from your advocacy, and all your partners have been given access to your social media advocacy, and they're all posting the exact same content about you, and you're wondering why it's not working, it's because you're basically shouting at people rather than letting them decide what your reputation is.
I remember when I was trying to sell certain products that I knew were amazing, and I would hear things from my clients, well, yeah, but I had heard this about them and I heard that about them. I'm like, that was 10 years ago. But they weren't involved with all the stuff that we've been talking about now, where they were constantly monitoring their reputation, making sure that their reputation in a positive way was being fed, and they responded to any negative comment that might have come up and transformed it, or transform their business because there was an issue that needed to be taken care of. So let's talk about gaining visibility now.
I do want to just jump on that for a second.
Okay.
So if you as a vendor think that the brand that you have out there is what's defining you with your partners, I would encourage you to go on any of the Facebook or LinkedIn communities that have been established by the MSPs. So not the ones that have been established by the media or by a vendor, but go on, MSP Revolution or the IT groups, Facebook groups, they're really honest. And they'll let you listen. They don't care. I see Rob Ray from Dato. He's on it all the time, right? So he's fine with it. I'm on it all the time. They're fine with it. They have really honest conversations about you, your program, how they're making money, what's going on with their business. This data is available. And if you're sensing a theme, it's that data runs the business now.
Okay, and now we're going to post up another poll.
I love polls.
I know I love polls, especially when everybody participates in them. Janet, why don't you talk about what this poll is all about?
So, one of the things that occurs to me as we think about where the vendors have been through the years, they've always launched programs to help their channel partners evolve. That might have been certification programs, training programs, not for resale programs, marketing programs, cold calling programs, appointment setting programs. So I have to ask, since we know that those companies that have expert social sellers in the channel have 78% higher quota achievement, my question is, do you have social selling programs for your channel partners? So a quick yes, no, wouldn't know where to start, or we don't even have one for ourselves, are all acceptable answers.
And don't be shy. If you really don't know, just be honest here. Okay, and let's close the poll and share the results.
Good.
Janet,
So 27% have a social selling program. So again, I would encourage you to go and look to say, do I have a social selling program where I'm teaching them the skills? And if you are, then you're some of the very few lucky ones, because only 11%, we have surveyed the channel as well as looked at tens of thousands of channel partner sellers, and only 11% of channel partners have a social selling expert. So 27% of you offering programs would be great, as long as what you're offering is not just digital advocacy where they can get content, but actually a boot camp or training of some sort for them to learn about social selling, tools for them to use, content for them to use, coaching that allows them to become it, and then lead generation programs to help them to get leads. 40% said no. I'm not surprised by that, but I think this is the coming future. 7% wouldn't know where to start. 27% don't even have it for themselves. So the vast majority are the no, right, don't have it. And I think this is the next wave. So if you think about 5 or 6 years ago, if I had asked how many people would let somebody turn in an MDF request to do search engine optimization or search engine marketing, the numbers might be very similar. And so I think we're going to see this expand. And as I think about the fact that our traditional channels don't have good social sellers, this is a simple way for you and your solution to gain access. Because when I say an expert social seller, it's really comprised of a few things. You can jot your pen out. But what really comes down to is not the channel firm being seen and getting visibility and getting heard. It's about people within. So the same people that have always been the people that get the sales, the sellers, the sales reps, the AEs, whatever you want to call them, are the same people that are going to be tasked here to get good at social selling. So what does that mean? So how would you know somebody was good? So the first thing is, I mentioned there's a score, a LinkedIn SSI score that stands for Social Selling Index. It gathers 4 pieces of data on the seller. It says, 1, how complete is their profile? So is their profile define them as an expert? Does it really set them aside? And here's a fun little game you can play. You can ask yourself, when was the last time that you did this? And thank you, Laura. When was the last time that you actually updated your profile? Right? So when was the last time that, rather than you adding your last job, which is what most people do, oh, new job, got to go on LinkedIn, update it, that you redid the entire thing, the picture, the banner, all of your experience, your skills, everything else. This is a skill. And if you have a good profile, LinkedIn gives you, score for it. And it's all that LinkedIn SSI is all around establishing a seller's credibility. So the second thing that they do also under credibility is that they look at how often you share valuable content and insights. So is the seller just repeating something that you or the company they work for put out there? Or are they sharing real valuable content? Are they engaging with people and having insights? You get another 25 points for that. And then the other two around how well they build relationships and how well they connect with people. So are they really using social media once they've got that great content out there and people find them? Are they actually going out there? Are they supporting, you know, for you as a vendor, most important to see if they're supporting your solution, right? But are they supporting a conversation that makes people want to connect with them? And so I think that it's really important that we think about that situation. And Laura, I don't know if you have any thoughts on that.
I do, because, you know, I see this often where somebody says they're a partner and they just constantly post the party line. And my clients and at me as a client, when I'm looking for something, I don't want to know the marketing speak. I want to know real world, how it applies to me, what's actually happening out there in the world. Give me a scenario that I can relate to, that makes me want to buy it and see credibility with you from not just the vendor saying you're good, but your clients saying you're good as well, and the clients saying these products are really great. So I agree with you 1,000%, Janet, that we're not doing it well enough from both the partner selling side and from the vendor selling side. They're not getting involved in the conversations on the social platforms, looking at the conversations that are happening and interjecting in there.
They're not, and that engagement is what really matters. And if they're not engaging on behalf of your solution, we mentioned this earlier, you know, using a tool like PartnerOptimizer, you should be able to see the partners that are engaged in your solution, that are promoting it, that have the right certifications, et cetera. And now, you know, you have to have that conversation, right, with them about their sellers and about how they're going to market, how are they getting this done? Because in all this chaos, right, and all this change and all this, you know, whether it's pandemic or digital or anything else, the opportunity for you is massive. There are new channels that can go and help you, but you have to define those channels, you have to find them. There are new partners. So there are partners who traditionally you might not have looked at. Maybe they were an ISV, or maybe they were a SaaS partner and you were in the hardware world, but now you're moving into a recurrent revenue world. And so often what I see is people guessing. And it frightens me because I see or hear the conversations, and I have a vendor say, oh, we're adding 150 partners a month. Are they the right partners? Are they the partners that have your solution fully in line, that have the right skills, that have the right go-to-market, that have the right sellers? And how do you know? And listen, some of the conversations you have to have, right? Face-to-face or Zoom to Zoom or net meeting to net meeting, right? But most of that data you can hone down, you know, using a tool like PartnerOptimizer. And so I'm always concerned when vendors say, well, we're just, you know, we're out there and we think there's hundreds of thousands of partners that match our profile. That is not possible. And in most partner programs, 90% of the sales come from less than 10% of the partners. Now, we all know who some of the big name partners are, and everybody aspires to get the three namers like SHI and CDW and NTT and others into their programs. But right, there's that next layer down, that fat middle, if you will, of partners who everybody also would like to get, but they have to get the right ones because there's tens of thousands of those partners and they have tens of thousands of options. Think about security. I'll use as my example. There, at my last count, there was 2,197 software security solutions. So recurrent revenue security solutions, 2,197 that the partner has to pick from. So how are they to know which one is best? Well, some of it is because you offered to let them sign up for your program, but that's really wasteful. When you think about, when you think about that process, how much better is it if you get the data on what do they do, what customers do they have, what do they sell, where are they, what other programs are they in, what competencies and certifications do they have, and you could hone that tens of thousands down to 500. Now think about the conversations you could have on social media, Because once you define that group of partners, and we're not going to events anymore, so recruiting them at events is kind of a done thing. But think about if you have that 500 and you break that out to 10 channel managers who each get 50 of those accounts to go after, and you have the full profile on them that, you know, conveniently Partner Optimizer gives you. It's one of my favorite tools to work in for the partners in case it doesn't show. And when you think about that and you think, okay, so if I had those 50 partners, I could go on Google Alerts, or if I'm using Sales Navigator on LinkedIn, I could use that to set up an alert for those 50 partners. I could engage with them when they post content, when they're making comments, when people are commenting about their company, and I will find, therefore, it very easy to connect with the CEO or sales manager of that company and have a real conversation about them joining my program. So because I you know, really believe that it's important, thank you. I thought, you know, and it was so wonderful of the whole team at SaaSMAX, and Dina especially, and Clint to help me with this. But Laura, they said that I could give a Janet offer, a special offer for Friends of Janet, or FOJ, as we like to call it at the Janet.
And I was going to talk to this, but you just led so beautifully into, you know, the part. I just let you roll with it. So.
Yeah. Well, I'm going to do my own offer. How about that? So basically, I'm a big fan of this, if it didn't show already, because it backs up, it supports what I believe in as we work with vendors and redefine their channel programs, as we work with vendors to bring channels to market. And most importantly, as we work with startup vendors to find the right partners, my go-to tool every time is Partner Optimizer. So people think I'm some kind of genie, you know, special magic, woo! She knows how to pick the right partners. No, I know where to go for the right data. And so when I asked, Laura and Dina and the team were also nice, and they said, here's what we'll do. We'll enhance the ideal reseller partner persona, which most of you should have, right? What's your ideal partner? If you don't, they can give you some tools to figure that out. And they'll give you 10 key insights, and they'll aggregate it from up to 100 of your current partners. So when we think about who's going to win and who's going to lose in my current partners, I could take my top 100 partners and run them through this, and be able to actually get key insights around what's happening in that partner community around their businesses. So that's a pretty great offer. Did I do okay, Laura, or do you need to say anything else?
You did great, you know, and I wish I had this data when I had my tech business, just to look at my clients, because every year I would have to go nuts looking at all this data I had on my clients. And every year we let go at least one client who we realized wasn't necessarily fitting our optimal client partner thing. And I recently heard that there was a very well-known channel vendor who was going through a lot of shifts. You know, they were trying to cut costs, they were doing a whole bunch of different things, and they cut a third of their channel partners off their list. You're off. You're no longer one of our partners. It had zero impact to their bottom line, because they cut the partners that were just saying they were partners but never did anything.
But didn't work, yeah.
Yes. On the partners, like myself, when I had my business, they could give me more to build more.
Right, right. But now in the digital normal, maybe a small handful of those partners you cut were the absolute wrong partners to cut.
Right.
Which is why I like data, because maybe they haven't produced anything for you because you haven't produced anything for them. Right? You let them join with the thousands of other unwashed masses. You didn't realize you had a gem in the making, so you didn't you know, bring them along for the ride. So I tend to like to run through the data and say, okay, I've got this 1,000 plus that have done nothing. There's probably 10 in there that if I dug in, they'd be great. Let me those 10 aside and get rid of the others. Now, of course, you have to do that ethically. You can't just pick and choose. You have to have a defensible reason in most channel programs to do that. But you can usually find a defensible reason for that. But again, I think the channel is not an art, it is a science. And so, you know, I truly believe in using scientific methods. So I know we only have 10 minutes left. Do we have any questions?
We have a number of questions, and one of the questions that came up several times was on the idea of social selling. I know we talked about this on the poll, so I'm going to paraphrase all of them. Is there one aspect of creating a social selling program for us and our partners that would be a key way to first start once we have the data?
Yeah, so I think, one thing is, oh, that's so difficult to do. But yes, I'll do it quickly. So one thing, once you have the data, you can see what solutions and what target markets your customers are going after, and you can really work on the content that's most applicable. So I'm going to say the content would be the very first thing that I would work on. And by the way, if you're nervous about that and you're saying, well, it would be so hard to do that, there's great tools out there. There's a tool called Vendasta. So it's kind of how it sounds, but Vendasta. It's a white label marketplace. So your your partners, can actually have a marketplace. So if you're thinking, hey, I want to do this social selling thing, but then I think it's going to result in kind of click-throughs and people wanting to buy, and your partners don't have that capability, there's a great tool called Vendasta that can do that for you. In fact, George Lee, who's their CCO, just won one of the Top Gun 51s. So that's amazing. And there's some great small niche distributors that can help you as well, right? So if we think of folks like Rick Becker's at I can never say his name right, but XaaS, basically it's XaaS something. Sorry, I apologize for that, Rick, if you're out there listening. But they have some great ways to narrow down some of this stuff as well, right? And to help the vendors get after some of these newer partners. So I hope that helps to answer.
Another feed kind of adjacent question to that. What social media do you feel gets the most responses when looking for new partners, or what do you recommend? And I know that's a tough question. It depends.
LinkedIn. I'm going to say LinkedIn all day long, but not if you're just posting boring content. You have to be really a person who's engaged and engaging. Somebody who comes to mind who also won a Top Gun 51 is Kathleen Curry, so the new channel chief at McAfee. She's very engaged and engaging in social media, and it shows, and people want to work with the team because of it. So I think LinkedIn is a truly great place to see people.
And I think the critical thing to LinkedIn is using it right, because so many people don't have their profiles set correctly. They're not putting new content up there. They're not engaging in the forums.
Right, and you want to go look at people. I mean, I can use myself as an example, or you as an example, or Dina Moskowitz as an example, but you want to go look at people that are having good conversations. So if I think about Meredith Karam, I see her, she's on here at Citra, former AT&Ter, and yet again in a bigger role because she's a rock star, also a Top Gun 51. So there's a theme here, right? That people who do this get noticed and get awards, and the channel notices them. She's always out there engaging, not just in her own company's content, but personally rewarding, speaking to her partners, having these deep conversations. And I think that's important. I think that's where people need to really get their heads wrapped around that approach.
Okay. This is kind of an interesting one. I'm trying to figure out the best way to phrase it because it's actually been asked by a couple of different people in a couple of different ways. What is the most important practical first step for an ISV or other channel environment moving to a channel model for the first time?
Well, you have to have a channel program. People forget this as part of how I make my living, but you can't say I want to sell through the channel, and then when the channel says, okay, how's that work go? So you have to have a basic master services agreement. You have to understand, are people getting a discount or a compensation? So discount on your service and they're going to bill, or a commission on your service and they're going to get a commission and you're going to bill. You have to understand what competencies they have to have, and then what are the revenue goals and what do they get in return for that? Bigger discount, bigger commission, marketing development funds. It does not have to be a super complicated program. You do not have to spend $100,000 building your program. Then once you've figured out what your go-to-market motions are, your channel motions, the next thing to do is go build that ideal reseller partner persona. Who are the ideal partners? Because just saying I'm going to sell through channels may sound good for the venture capital investment pitch that you did, right? 75% of all solutions are sold through the channel. We're going to sell through the channel. It sounds great, but you've got to be specific. These are I always call it dirty dozen. What are my dirty dozen first partners that would actually make a difference for me? They're ideal, they fit my persona. Now, to do that, you can spend, I don't know, $75,000 or $100,000 going to every event in the industry once they're back on, sponsoring them, having booths, talking to all the unwashed masses, trying to find the right people, or you can just use the data that's available to find the right partners. And a big part of that data, you know, I'm like a pitch person at this point, is for PartnerOptimizer. You know, that data is there. And then of course, you know, you can also look at other sources of data through your distributor, through vendors that you're friends with, et cetera. But data really lets me hone down who those top 12 are going to be. Once you get those first 12 partners up and selling, more ideal partners will come to light because you'll be able to better say which ones worked and continue to hone your data set to say, what are my next 10, what are my next 100, what are my next 1,000? And anybody that has more than 1,000 partners, I'm really questioning, unless you're a huge vendor, because that's a lot of partners.
Yeah, and there are some that do because they're global, but the question is, are they the right 1,000 partners?
No, they want to, you know, listen, there's a reward in channels from sweeping the volume, right? So the fact that you can sweep all the onesie-twosie deals, that's awesome, that's great. But you know, you don't want to go from there.
Okay. You talked a little bit about this, but to expand on this question, what are some important operational capabilities to consider when selecting which channels to prioritize and grow?
Well, I mean, the easy answer is to say the ones that can get you revenue. But I would say, depending on the business you're in, if you're in a recurrent revenue business, it's really important to make the decision whether you want the billing relationship or you're okay with the partner having the billing relationship. And that'll tell you whether you should prioritize the reseller community or the agent community. And then you want to add on top of those other sellers or influencers that can bring you to market. I would say right now, I believe the MarTech channel is really important. I think you can turn your partners into a mini MarTech channel by offering them, and I think we should see this on top of social selling as something vendors offer in their program. I think they should also offer a white label marketplace. And so I think you can get those folks. And then finally, I think those influencers are, you know, truly, truly important. So how do you get the right influencers?
Okay, so this is a follow-up to the conversation that's been happening. I'm going to read it just as it is, okay? So it's a math exercise. Revenue targets and work back through your dirty dozen plus to calculate who will help you attain those targets. Reasonable?
It's a half math, so it's science with a tidgy bit of art. So work through your revenue, who's going to get you there, but then you have to think about those dirty dozen and how they're going to get you there, right? So it's not just revenue. Hey, there's these top 10 partners and I need $1 million and at least do 100,000 and that's how I'm going to set it. You'll likely have one that's going to do 300,000 and a bunch that are going to do 50. So you have to really think about their customer base and how they're going to go after it. But primarily a reasonable assumption, yes.
Okay. And we only have a really brief moment left. So there's one question here, and I'm just going to go with it. What actions must vendors and partners take to survive in the age of pandemics?
Well, first of all, you got to give up that dependence on the events. Virtual events are nice, and I've enjoyed today's conversation, but you're likely not going to find your partners there. And I believe you have to up your game for yourself and your channels in the digital world. So that means doing things like having investment packages to optimize local search. Local search delivers 85% of leads, and most partners are about a 100-mile journey for their customers. So what are you doing to stimulate local search for your partners? How are you working with them on their websites with that? And then, of course, as I mentioned, social selling, social selling, social selling. You should be social selling to your partners, and you should be really working with the partners to do social selling with you. Shameless plug. JS Group has a program for that if you're struggling on knowing how to do it for yourself, your team, or your channel. And I'm always happy to take a phone call, take a DM, take an email at any time.
Okay, and if anybody for some reason does not know how to reach out to Janet, I mean, just Google her. I mean, she's everywhere. Janet, your @ChannelSmart is your Twitter handle. Pretty much everywhere that you're at, you're on LinkedIn. And everywhere. I want to thank you so much for doing this exclusive event with us today. As always, your insights are just unbelievable.
Thank you, and good luck to everybody. Happy channel selling.
Right, and I know we didn't get to a couple of questions that were asked. I will make sure Janet gets those questions and we get the answers to you as best we can. And there were a number of questions about how do you get Partner Optimizer? How do you take advantage of this offer? My email address is on the screen, laura.stewart@saasmax.com or partneroptimizer@saasmax.com. You're a great audience, lots of fantastic questions, both at the registration screen and during this. So thank you for being here. We are here to help. Have a great day, everyone.
Thank you.